YTBC, what's the deal? So I finally got a chance to check out Chasing Tyson, the 30 for 30 documentary that was on ESPN. It was a pretty good documentary. It was produced by Stephen Cantor. And what they did for this documentary, instead of, interviewing a lot of people and, trying to go back in the past, what Stephen Cantor chose to do for this particular documentary was there was so much around Tyson, around just the heavyweight division in general, around the late 80s going into the early to mid 90s. So what Stephen Cantor did was he just took all old interviews from around those times and kind of just let the story tell itself. There was old Holyfield interviews, old Tyson interviews, people from their camps. Just let the story tell itself, I guess there was hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage, and he had to break everything down and picked and chose, what he wanted to use for this film. So I'm happy about that. And I guess there were only 3 live interviews for this documentary. One with Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, and Jim Gray. But before I get to the film, man, let me just say that, I've seen all types of Tyson documentaries. I mean, there's countless documentaries of Tyson. And, they'll talk to guys like, Teddy Atlas and Kevin Rooney and, old interviews from Caton and Jacobs and Steve Lott and all the, Don King and all these people. But I just think they're doing, these documentaries a disservice, man, to the public. We never get to hear from John Horn or Rory Holloway. Now, some of you may say why. They were thugs, they were hanger-ons, they were this, they were that. And I don't know if you guys really know the full story of those 2 gentlemen. They were, Mike Tyson's manager. Some of you remember Rory Holloway, John Horn, after the ear bite incident, when they were in the back and he was outside of the locker room conducting an interview with Jim Gray. And he was saying, I don't know what's going on until I see the tape. I don't know if he bit him, but all I know is my fighter got a, 20-inch cut across his head, across his eye. But John Horn, they were doing their job, man. That's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to ride or die for your fighter. And these dudes catch a lot of slack, man. They're, people call them unprofessional. And why did Tyson give them the job? And, it goes deeper than that, man. You guys need to do your research on these 2 gentlemen, man. And you can think whatever you want to think. And all managers and promoters and people that are involved in boxing, they're all going to get looked at as shady characters. Even people look at Al Heyman as a shady character right now. But you can argue that Al Heyman and Floyd Mayweather pretty much used John Horn's and Rory Holloway's blueprint when they made Floyd's deal with Showtime when he got the, 300 million or whatever he signed for. Tyson pretty much, he had a deal like that. Well, I know he signed with Showtime and the MGM. I think it was like $80 million before he even threw a punch. Not even for the fights, just for the time, just for the deal with MGM and Showtime. It was like 80 million. And that John Horn and Rory Holloway was able to get that for him. I know when he was with Caton and Jacobs and all that, he had 8 fights? What was it? 8 fights for 24 million, which isn't bad. But then you look at what Horn and Holloway did just for the Showtime deal. He got 80 million for an 18-month deal, and people say that Mike Tyson, he made 300 million out of his whole career. No, he made up to 300 million after he got out of prison. Just those fights alone, the money he got for the fights, and then the Showtime and MGM deal was damn near, like I said, 80 million itself, not counting what he got for the fights. So the popularity of Mike Tyson and then what his managers and what Don King was able to do as far as getting him the big money fights, they did their jobs. Now, when that money was dispersed at the end, I don't know. I wasn't there for all of that. But, yeah, John Horn and Rory Holloway, I wish these guys, man, to get a chance to get into one of these damn documentaries and tell their side of the story, man. We never hear from these dudes, man. People never like to give them their credit and their props. They were pretty much doing what Al Heyman is doing right now, as far as getting big money deals and sitting down with these networks and letting fighters know, hey, man, do you know how much you're really worth? Because back, around with the heavyweights, man, when Ali and, Foreman and those guys were getting, that, $5 million checks, that was like the end all be all. Like nobody ever got 5 million. And it took guys like John and Rory and even Don King to let Tyson know, like, dude, you are worth fucking millions of dollars. Like you're way surpassed, especially with, pay-per-view coming in and the revenue from that and merchandising and stuff. I mean, they were really helping Mike Tyson as far as his money. Just as my opinion. I wasn't there, and some of you guys wasn't there either. You guys are just quick to say these guys were hanger-ons and thugs. It's funny, man, because when John Horn and Rory Holloway was coming to the fights dressed in suits and suited and booted and looking, sharp, they were gangsters. Then when the motherfuckers wore sweatsuits and jeans, then they were thugs. It was like, God, you can't fucking win. These dudes, and all this, you need, 3 different degrees and a master's and all that. There's no qualifications in boxing. You don't need, it's not guaranteed because you went to college and graduated and you have 2 or 3 different degrees that you're going to be successful. You may have the looks or for somebody that's going to be successful in the sport as far as managing or promoting, but that doesn't necessarily, you have to know the business, man. And you have to know the sports entertainment business and stuff like that. So I just wish John Horn and Rory Holloway would get a chance to tell their side of the story. You never get to see those guys, man. But to the documentary, it's funny, man, looking at this because some of the things that were going on, if this was today, if the social media was around back then, or these guys are fighting into today's climate, Holyfield would catch a lot of slack, man. And my top 5 fighters of all time: Ali, Holmes, Foreman, Tyson, Holyfield. So this documentary was special to me as a fan because these are 2 of my favorite top 5 fighters. But like I told you guys before, the guy that I hated the most growing up was fucking Evander Holyfield, man. I hated Evander. I hated him because I was such a big Mike Tyson fan. It took me until going into the 2000s when I really broke down his career, man, and really start to, give this man his proper respect. Well, it was after the Airbite fight is when I really started to respect him. But then when I really started to really like Holyfield, man, was pretty much after it wasn't after he was done, but it was after his prime years. And I was like, man, Holyfield's one of my favorites of all time, even though I hated him growing up. But he would have been, the same thing would have happened nowadays, man. It was funny because Holyfield said when he moved up to heavyweight after, going undisputed at cruiserweight, he said that the plan was to fight everybody that Tyson fought. Now guys get, if 2 guys are supposed to be on the collision course, now guys get ridiculed for doing that. Holyfield went in there, he fought Pinklon Thomas and James Tillis, all of Mike Tyson's leftovers. Then he diverted a little bit and he fought Michael Dokes, a fight that he was supposed to get tested. Some people thought he was going to lose. But it's just funny, man. And then he didn't get his respect back then. No matter how the effort he fought in, either he had no power. Then another thing in the film that caught my attention, another reason what made me hate Evander so much, you guys know I said this before, was Evander, whenever he lost, it was always, about a shoulder or his heart, or, he couldn't breathe or some shit. And whenever he won, it was always, he was praising the Lord. Then another thing that made me hate him even more, with all that said, was when the shit he did with, what was that dude's name? I forget the dude's name. It was the evangelist, the popular evangelist, Benny Hinn. When he went on his show, man, it was after the Moore defeat, after the first Moore fight, when his heart was, he said something wrong with his heart, but he got misdiagnosed. But he went there and he was on the Benny Hinn, they're in front of thousands of people. You know how these evangelists do, the popular ones. And he healed Evander's heart, Evander started fucking speaking in tongues and fell down and, vibrating on the fucking floor, and, his heart was healed by Benny Hinn. Oh, give me a fucking break, man. It's like, those are the things I hated Evander. Like, people get on Manny Pacquiao for his salt water. We would have had a field day with Evander Holyfield. Could you imagine, Adrian Bronner going on, TD Jakes or some shit, or any of those pastors, man, and, getting healed and, fall on the floor and all that. I mean, you would sit there and be like, man, are you serious, man? But there was a rumor that came out that, I guess Evander gave him there was some money exchange, supposedly $265,000 between Hinn and Holyfield. I don't know, but that was another reason why I hated Evander. I remember seeing that on ESPN, like, are you serious, Evander? Like, Benny Hinn didn't heal your fucking heart, man. But, good documentary, all in all. The HD helped the documentary, because I remember some of these news, some of the footages from newscasts talking about some of these fights. But watching it in HD, especially the press conference of the Holyfield Tyson, the first one and the second one, they were showing it in HD. A lot of the stuff I remember, always knew Tyson was an arrogant, son of a bitch. Always knew that Holyfield was the quiet guy. And Tyson even said something in here, man. He said that we live in a bizarro type of world. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he said we live in a bizarro type of world where, the bad guy was the good guy. He's like, shit, I was the good guy back then. Like, no matter how bad I was, going to fucking punching Mitch Green in the face and Dapper Dan's, the Desiree Washington situation, anything he did, the public, the fans, like me and my family, we liked it. Even when he was in the wrong, he was like one of us, like, man, he'll be all right, he made a mistake. Evander was the one that was church going and everything, and people look at him like he was the fucking schmuck and he was the paper champ. Mike Tyson said that. He's like, man, we live in a bizarre world, man. Like, I was the good guy and he was the bad guy. And I told you guys that Evander was looked at as a paper champion back then. Go back to 1992. There's a rap group called Above the Law. It was my Uncle Will. It was his favorite, one of his favorite rap groups back then. I remember riding his car, my older uncle back then in about 92, 93. And they have a song, Above the Law has a song called VSOP. Some of you cats probably remember that. Some of you hip hop heads, they had the video and everything. But in that, one of the rappers said that, I won't be a paper champ like Evander Holyfield. Holyfield was looked at like a paper champ from everybody. Even when he fought an old ass George Foreman and an old ass Larry Holmes, people are like, yeah, them dudes is old. Now in hindsight, Foreman went on to win the title, knocked out Michael Moore, a guy who beat Holyfield, and Holmes went on to beat, Ray Mercer, and Holmes has some longevity, he has some good outings, even in losses, but people are like, yeah, dude, but you beat two motherfuckers combined age of 90. Like, nobody cared about those wins. And so Holyfield was searching for respect, man. He was searching for respect. He had really no plans, as he put it, of fighting Mike Tyson. When Mike Tyson was locked up, his plans were to go back, beat Ray Mercer and then beat Lennox Lewis and then call it a day. That sounds pretty fucking, that sounds good, but trying to beat Moore and Lennox around that time back to back would have been an uphill battle, even for a great fighter like Evander Holyfield. But Buster Douglas comes, he knocks out Tyson. Holyfield beats him, gets no respect. Even the second Bo fight, got no respect. And I remember in that fight, the first fight between Holyfield and Bo, if you listen during the telecast, I remember Foreman was saying he thought that Bo probably scaled off too many pounds, and he thought Bo should have been heavier. Then he said Bo should be like 8 to 10 pounds heavier. Then Bo comes into the rematch a little bit heavier, and he's out of shape, and Holyfield still gets no credit. Then the fucking fan man comes down from the moon, and he gets he got the same treatment as Jesus got. They whooped his ass, and that kind of put a dark cloud over a Holyfield victory. So just sometimes watching Holyfield, he never got credit. Then George Foreman would do the fights, and I used to hate when Big George would do some of the fights, man. Although he did know what he was talking about, he would always kind of put a damper on fights, man. And this kind of off subject, but like what he did with the Hopkins and Trinidad fight, he wasn't giving fucking Hopkins no credit during the whole fight, man. It was like, you watching it, listening to him, you almost thought Hopkins was about to get knocked out. The third Bo and Holyfield fight, I didn't like that when he kept talking about the man's heart and, and all this. And even the Moore fight, man, the Moore and Holyfield fight, it was just like, I kind of hated when Foreman would do some of the fights, man. He would take away from the fight, you know what I mean? And I remember in the third Bo fight, he was getting him saying, stop it, stop the fight, stop it, stop it. I was just like, dude, he's getting beat. Shit, Riddick Bowe's a good fighter. He just got beat. You know what I mean? But that was another reason why I fucking hated Holyfield back then, growing up as a teenager. But good documentary, you know what I mean? All in all, if you've seen it once, you've seen it twice, you know all about this story. They talked about him in the Olympics and what happened in the Olympics. So like I said, if you've seen it once, you've seen it all. It's a good documentary to check out, though. There may be some footage and maybe some interviews that you probably didn't see or you forgot about, but I seen majority of these interviews and I know the story. But it's a good documentary, man. And they went over another thing they went over with Holyfield was his steroid use. You know, that they were saying that his muscular development and carrying his power up was due because of steroids. Then he goes up to heavyweight and he couldn't knock out Foreman or Holmes. Then he didn't have no power. So it was like no matter what this dude did, he was never getting no credit. You know, and had social media been around, it would have been worse. But Holyfield's one of those type of fighters, man, where, you know, it's like aged wine. You know what I mean? It gets better by time, man. And you just got to really, you know, take a step back and go through his career. Holyfield was a terrific fighter. He was anything, you know, he was the furthest object from a fucking paper champion. If anything, he was a real champion. I respect Holyfield. Mike Tyson also respected Holyfield. No matter how he acted in the annex he put on, he always knew that fighting Evander was going to be tough. Although Tyson did say he thought Evander looked like shit against Bobby Chez, which I also think he did too. And after like a week of the fight, Tyson people called Holyfield and wanted to fight him right off the Bobby Chez situation. And they finally got that fight back together. Then I was hearing, you know, Rory Holloway and John Horn in interviews before say that after the Douglas loss, that Tyson actually wanted Holyfield, and Holyfield, since he had the title, now he wanted Tyson to chase him. Now that's according to them. Now I've heard Duva and Tyson, and I've heard interviews before them say that they wanted Tyson right away. It was Tyson that was the one that didn't want to fight. You know, but Tyson chose to fucking fight Alex Stewart. He came back and he beat Tillman. Then he wanted then he fought Stewart. Going into that Stewart fight, HBO wanted Tyson to either fight Buster Douglas in a rematch, or they wanted him to fight Holyfield. And Tyson and his people chose to fight Stewart. And that was their last fight on HBO. Then we remember Spike Lee had the, during that fight, Spike Lee and Don King got together and they did like a little interview movie type of thing. They did it's like a little 5-minute movie clip thing they did together in an interview, and they showed it on that telecast, and it was kind of controversial and it was race driven. And Tyson and King knew that they wasn't going to be on HBO, and they're going to go to Showtime. And after the Stewart fight, they just didn't like Larry Merchant. People always think that Floyd Mayweather's the only person that didn't like Larry. It's like, dude, a lot of people had trouble with Larry Merchant. Larry Holmes, Roy Jones Jr., and Mike Tyson. If you go look at the end of that Stewart fight, you can see Larry and Mike. You know, Tyson was saying that was his last fight on there. And I couldn't blame Larry at that point. Nobody wanted to fucking see him fight Alex Stewart, man. People want to see the Holyfield fight, or if anything, see if you can get, run that back with Buster Douglas. Whether Douglas had the title or not, just shit. Can you beat Buster? But Tyson did go to Showtime and he fought, one of the hardest. Tyson and Ruddock was viewed at that time as the hardest punchers in the division. Now, in hindsight, looking at it in history, you don't remember Ruddock like that, but at the same time, Ruddock was a hard hitter, man. He wasn't some fucking feather-fisted fighter. He was a top 3 heavyweight at that time. So Showtime wasn't about to let Tyson fight a gimme. They put him in there with Ruddock, and then they ran it back because they thought Richard Steele stopped the fight too early. So yeah, I like the documentary, man. I know I'm all over the place, but it covers so many things. Go watch the documentary, y'all. 30 for 30, Chasing Tyson. Then they go into the air bite situation. They go into the first Holyfield fight, and we know the history of that. Good documentary though, man. But I like to see, like I said, man, John Horn and Rory Holloway. I like to see what they have to say about these fights, man, about Tyson and his situation. And I just never get to hear from these guys, man. Like I don't know if these guys are if they're denying interviews or they're just getting blackballed, man. But I've never heard nobody talk about the way they conducted business or anything. And I think these guys were instrumental in Mike Tyson, man. When he was locked up, they were taking care of his personal finances and they were helping Mike, man. So, but a lot of people look at them like thugs and gangsters, but good documentary. YTBC. I'm out. Heavyweights, man. Go check that shit out.